Hello and welcome to the Sex and Healing podcast. I am your host, Erin Kyna, and thank you so much for joining me as we take a wild ride through the realms of sex and healing. So today we have the beautiful, sensual Eleanor Hadley. She is the queen of sensuality. She's a sensuality coach, a sex educator, and she has her own amazing podcast as well called the Sensuality Academy. So I came across this beautiful creature on Instagram and immediately I was like, she needs to be my friend. So before I ask you too much about your journey, I'm super curious, Eleanor, do you know your sun, moon, and rising signs?
Great question to start with. Yes, I do. I am a Taurus through and through. That is my sun sign. I don't know if you can tell, but Taurians are very sensual, and that's what I do. So resonate very deeply with that. My moon is Cancer and my rising is Aries.
Oh, nice. That's a good balance. So my sun is Cancer and I've got Pisces moon and Pisces rising, but my lover has a Taurus moon. So I get to receive all those beautiful, sensual Taurian qualities as well, which really you have embodied that entirely.
I really have. When I first got my chart read a few years ago and they told me that Taurians were sensual, I was like, oh, everything in my life makes sense.
I felt the same. The first reading I had too, I was like, holy fuck, you know me better than I know myself. Like it was quite confronting.
Honestly. Yeah, it really affirmed, like that was when I had my idea to create my movement practice and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This affirms my entire career path. Thank you.
I actually was studying some astrology this morning and I had a session with my healer and she went to scan my chakras and she's like, oh my God, your third eye, it's so vast. She's like, it's got all these constellations in it. It's like it's reaching out into the stars. I was like, yeah, I've just been studying. But I was so fucking happy. I was like, oh my God, to have stars and constellations in my third eye. That's the fucking coolest thing I've ever heard.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you came to become the queen of sensuality.
So yeah, as you said, I am a sensuality coach and sex educator, founder of a movement practice that I have just recently renamed to Sensualista Flow. And I started, I guess, the way that I started my movement practice was I used to own a pole dancing studio. I got inspired to create a movement practice that was a little bit more embodied, less about performance, and a little bit more kind of soulful. And that's how I created this new movement practice. From then, I started just talking about sensuality all the live long day to the point where someone recommended I would be a great coach. I studied life coaching. Naturally, my specialty was in sensuality. I love sex. I love sex education. I love learning more about sexuality. And so then I've just kind of flowed on to become a sex educator as well. And yeah, it's so much fun. I love this work so much.
Same, especially when it's just you being you. You know, what's happened is you've come to know yourself and really understand yourself, and then you share yourself with the world. And that's the best any of us could ever ask for. We don't have to perform a role. We don't have to do a job. You just get to show up every day and be yourself. And where did you do your coach training?
I did it with Beautiful You Life Coaching Academy.
Yes.
They're based in Melbourne, but yeah. Julie, yeah.
Amazing.
So beautiful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Amazing. And so the reason why I gave you a little insight about what I'd love this conversation to be about today is because, in all transparency, when I came across your Instagram and it said Queen of Sensuality, I was like, oh, I want to be the queen. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And my first response to that is like, Erin, you're both queens. There's space for you both. There is no lack, there is no scarcity, but that is the typical wounding of the feminine. We've been conditioned to believe that we're in competition with each other and that, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Look at that, both arms. If she gets the attention, if she gets the love, if she gets the protection, if she gets the provisions, whatever it is that we're seeking in life, if we see another female take it, there's almost this instinctual sense of like, I'm going to miss out. And that's what our life experience has been for many of us, is that in one moment you're the center of someone's attention and it feels really good and you're getting your needs met, and then someone else might show up on the scene and that person subtracts from you to add to someone else. And then we feel this like that, coupled with the sense of needing to be chosen, which is also a very sad and limiting belief that we have in our mind, that, you know, someone else or some force outside of us makes us feel worthy, whether we're chosen or not, versus us choosing ourselves. But it got me thinking of the more as women we're empowered and the more we bring our sensuality and our sexuality to the surface of who we are, because I do believe it's inside for all of us, but it takes a fuckload of courage to say this is who I am in the world, and to take the armor off and to no longer hide those qualities. And when you bring them out and shine that light, you can have responses such as, I want to be the queen. Thankfully, I'm self-aware enough that, you know, I see you for who you are, but I know at an earlier stage of evolution, that really does come as a trigger and a disempowerment for others. So I'm super curious to know what it's like for you and how your journey to empowerment has looked and what kind of negative consequences you've experienced.
What a great question. Yeah, absolutely. There are some for sure. I think that, you know, it's funny that you bring up that that title, Queen of Sensuality, because this is something when I think I did one of my very first podcast interviews, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Asti Marie. She's a sexuality coach based in Sydney, and she introduced me as the Queen of Sensuality, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that.
I'm gonna flick my hair to that one. Sit up a little straighter, wear that crown.
I was like, that's a cool title. And I remember at the time talking with a business coach about it, and I was like, she called me the Queen of Sensuality, and like it felt really cool, but you know, I don't know if I can own that. And yeah, she was just like, basically, bitch, do it. And challenge me
work
to
in the world.
just like
make everyone fucking own it.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll own it, and I'll put that as my title. And now, yeah, it is something that people definitely remember. And it is something for me every day to be like, okay, you know, you're calling yourself the Queen of Sensuality, you better practice what you preach. Okay, like let's do this. But it was definitely a journey. And I love what you said before about, you know, now my work is essentially just being myself, like fully embodied, authentic. This is just me. I love this. I love talking about all of this stuff that I teach. And so it comes really naturally. But at the start, you know, it was a huge step for me back in the day to purchase a pole dancing studio and be that person, the owner of a studio. But even then, you know, I was around a lot of people that I didn't feel like I connected with deeply. It was very surface level. I was in a relationship that didn't nourish me. I didn't feel like I could be myself. I felt like I had to be small and delicate and, you know, not speak up too much. And I love that you sort of brought this up, because I was literally thinking about this last night. Like, how cool is it that now I am making like silly reels on Instagram for thousands of people about like sex life, and it, like a few years ago, I would never have done that, because I wouldn't have had the confidence. I would have felt like, oh, what are people going to think of me? I'm going to be nervous, and what if people judge me, and what if like the boys don't like me, and all that bullshit. But now I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah, I've got a public profile, and you can see. And if you see that and you don't like it before we go on a date, cool. I'm not for you.
Exactly. Thank you for screening for me.
Honestly.
Because it's what we would be doing if we were having a sleepover and we were mucking around, and we'd be talking about sex, and we'd be talking about movement, we'd be talking about our bodies. That is who we would be. But as soon as you take it out into the public platform, then we go, you know, that there's fear there for all of us, and it comes with that imposter syndrome too. And I remember when I first started stepping into the coaching world 10 years ago, it was exactly the same. It was like, oh my God, now everyone thinks I need to be this thing. And you feel so afraid, because you actually can feel the difference. Maybe this isn't everyone's experience, but certainly was mine. You feel the need to portray an image as a coach or as a business owner, to have your shit together, to look like you've got no problems. And so you're constantly hiding behind that, and you feel inadequate and you feel scared. But when you step out of that paradigm and you just fucking own it, you're like, yeah, I've got my own shit too. And yeah, I can be an idiot on Instagram. And yeah, I am whatever. I still cry over boys or whatever the hell it might be. Then there's no inadequacy, because you're no longer trying to be something that you're not. There's no imposter syndrome anymore, because how could you be an imposter of yourself?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, it's such a relief. What a weight off your shoulders.
Exactly. And how old are you?
I'm 31.
31. So I'm 30. 8 this year. And I feel like something comes with age as well, like this maturity and comfort in owning ourselves, that you just could not pay me enough money to go back to my 20s. Like, honestly, there is not enough money on the planet to make me in my 20s again and have to suffer the way I made myself suffer because I did not know what I know now.
Absolutely. And like 22-year-old me would have resented hearing that, but it's so true. Like, you just grow and grow and grow. And, you know, if you're doing the work, you grow into yourself, and it's just like coming home, and it's so, so nice. Honestly, I thought I had my shit together back then, but oh, girl, no.
Oh, girl, that does not stop. I thought more. I'm like, so my title is MDMA in human form. And so that came, I used to have a drug problem when I was young, and I partied, and then, you know, I got completely away from that kind of lifestyle, and I'm very spiritual at my core, and I didn't drink for 3 years, and I'm a yoga teacher, and all these kind of identities that you take on. And then I started dating this guy in Europe who took drugs, and he was a heart surgeon, and he was super rigid and super conservative. And like, I understand why he would need drugs to soften and open. Like, I have no judgment for anyone else's path. It just wasn't my path. Like, I don't need that now. Look how open my heart is. I'm so loving. Life is so good. I just don't want to take drugs. And he said to me, come to a line. I was like, no, I don't need that. I don't need that. And then at some point I said to myself, Erin, you're here for the full spectrum experience of life. Just fuck it, do it. It's been probably 10 years since I'd had drugs. Yeah. I was like, I'll have a line. And I literally came down. Like, I just kind of shrunk into this hole, and I was like, oh my God, this feels like shit. And so the next weekend we ended up going to London together, and he brought MDMA, and the same thing. He said, have something. I'm like, no, I'm cool. And then I was like, oh, fuck it, just try it. Same thing. I just came down. And so after that experience, I thought, holy fuck, I am the drug. Back when I lived at this low vibrational experience and I hated myself and I had so much emotional pain and no skills to deal with it, drugs were the solution. They took me to this higher place where I felt open, where I felt connected, where I felt free, where I felt like the fucking king. You know, like, I was just untouchable. It just was so much better than my daily reality. But as you continue to do the work on yourself, your daily reality comes so good that you exist way higher than the frequency of drugs. And it gave me a lot of compassion for my younger self, because I thought, this is what I was chasing. I always knew somewhere inside of me were these feelings that I would now call God or universal source or whatever anyone else wants to call it. It was that deep connection to the universe that I know that I have inside of me. It's just that drugs were the only avenue, a synthesized version of that feeling that I knew that I could have. So that was an awesome experience for me to have in Europe, because I was like, that shows me how far I've come. It showed me that drugs really are redundant in my life, and it shows me that I am the fucking drug. My heart is the MDMA. So having this title of MDMA in human form is exactly the same journey that you've had. It's just, fuck, that's who I am. That's just, it might be a slightly larger expression of ourselves than what we've known, but the truth is there. The vibrational reality is there of like, fuck, that's me. That's a version of me. Like, we're everything, obviously. I'm sure that you are not in that energy 100% of the time, as I'm not. And I can be grumpy and I can be moody and I can doubt myself. I'm certainly not high on God all the time. But when I'm there, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's the full human experience, but being able to kind of like step in and drop into that authentic version of you so much easier.
Fuck. And I think all those times that we didn't know ourselves makes it so much fucking sweeter. Absolutely. Like, honestly, if we were just given this understanding of ourselves from the beginning of our awareness in this life, you would not appreciate it in the same way. Like, you just wouldn't know how fucking good this feels without having suffered the way that we did in our 20s, with our body image, with our sexuality, with our understanding of who we are as a woman, with the world the way that it was, and the way that we've seen evolution shift. Like, I got into a same-sex relationship in 2002, I think. I can't even remember now. I was 21. 2001? No, I can't even calculate. Early 2000s. Let's just have a look at what's changed, in that 20 years since what it was like for me coming out at 2021. Like the world changes and it's amazing, and we're part of that change. And I know from following you on Instagram that you're quite political, might not be the right word, but I see you having very strong values and ideals that you wish to express with the world. So do you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I don't think I've ever been referred to as political, though. But yeah, I do have very strong values, and to me, it's always been very important to me that I express those. And being someone who now has a business, it's integral that it's part of my business. Like I don't think that they can not coexist. They must coexist, because my business is an extension of me. It's my name.com. You know, it is not me, but it is very much a part of me. And so, yeah, my values, I actually, as a little bit of background, I studied international community development at university before I decided to buy a pole dancing studio.
I see that correlation. Clear stepping stone there, babe.
Totally makes sense. It makes sense. But regardless, I've always kind of worked in development, loved, learning more about different cultures and wanting to be of service in some way. I decided after my studies that it wasn't my place as a white Australian woman to go into other countries and like quote unquote help. I wanted to have a tangible skill. I didn't think it was relevant for me just as someone who knew a lot about development to just go in and be like, hey, I'm this white savior. And so that I loved my studies, and I had some amazing lecturers who essentially taught me that I was not necessarily needed. Community development starts from within the community. It's not an external thing. And so I've carried that with me. I've always known that I'm going to get back to development in some way, but I want it to be from a really grounded place. And so, yeah, I still have those values. Essentially, I just feel like we should all be good people and care about people and the world and humans.
I know.
It does feel very simple to me, but it's wild how controversial some things are. And I want to see if I can remember this acronym. There's this wonderful person I follow on Instagram. I think his handle is Matt XIV or something. And he's the one who does the makeup with like political statements on the side of his cheek.
Wow.
And they're really great. And he put one up the other day that said, "Don't be trash." And it was like transphobic, racist, something, all the things.
Anti
like
something,
anti something. I wish I could remember them, but yeah, and essentially that really correlates with my values. You know, I want to be inclusive of all races and genders and sexes, and acknowledge everybody's sexualities, and just kind of be inclusive and understand that not everybody is the same, and that we live in a world that is governed a lot by white supremacy. And as a white person, what can we do to unpack that and kind of help to dismantle that in whatever way we can? And there's a lot of intersections as well. As a woman, I identify as a feminist, but I think it's important that we understand the intersections. So I identify as an intersectional feminist. Jamila Jamil, who is someone that I admire a lot, she uses the term feminist in progress. So it's constantly learning. My feminism from a few years ago is very different to my feminism now, because I've learned and grown and paid attention and unpacked my own privilege as well. So all of those things are very important to me.
Yeah, because I really see a correlation there between putting yourself out in the world, having strong values and strong statements to make that are almost guaranteed to ruffle some feathers and not necessarily be accepted, but that's the path of the activist, is to ruffle those feathers. And also putting yourself out there as a sexual and a sensual woman. Both of those things are something that has been frowned upon for women for a long time. So how do you find it? Where do you get the courage, and what are the consequences of being that kind of woman in the world?
Oh, good question. Yeah, that's a great correlation. I think that with my journey, it started small. It was those small rebellions, those little rebellions of like, okay, here, I'm going to post.
It's making my heart race. Yes.
Like they all add up. after time. The first thing you do is like, you know, I think the first thing I did was post a photo of me upside down on a pole to Facebook. And it was just doing some kind of crazy cool trick. But that was terrifying for me to be like, hey, like to my, like, I don't know, 14 friends on Facebook back in the day, like I do pole dancing, and what's the judgment going to be? You know, telling my parents for the first time that the alternative dance classes I was going to every week were pole dancing classes. And then, you know, you kind of, you start to get a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger, and you're like, oh yeah, there weren't really bad consequences for that. It actually felt better for me to just be who I am instead of hiding it. And I mean, that also comes with a lot of privilege, you know, like I do have a very supportive family. I don't have like lots of cultural or religious things to kind of overcome and I know especially in terms of sexuality, there's a lot of things that can be really, really confusing and hard to own when you've got those kind of intersections. And so yeah, it was just this process of these little rebellions. Like, I'm going to post that. I'm going to, you know, do like more than just an emoji on an Instagram post. And I'm going to write about what I think about something. And then I started sharing that, and people were like, oh, wow, like, you know, I really respect your opinion. And it started conversation, and then it just kind of grows from there. And now I just feel, I still have moments where I'm like, oh, are people going to judge me? But at the end of the day, I'm like, well, they're not my people then. Like, that doesn't matter. I don't want to be surrounded by people who are judging me. So I'm just going to do my thing. And that's going to continue attracting the people that match me. Yeah. And if they don't, then that's cool. Like, exit to the left. That's fine. I don't mind.
Totally. I say this to my clients all the time, and it's a testament in my life too. People will always hate us. Always. Some idea that we can live a life where no one's judging us is such an illusion. Like, there will always be people who love you, and there will always be people that hate you. And just full stop. Not everyone's going to like us. And that's the beauty of individuality, and the beauty of humanity is our differences. So if we're looking for everyone to like us, or we're stopping ourselves from sharing our authentic truth because we're worried about judgment, you're only suffering yourself, because it's never going to happen. I actually got some criticism, some nasty fucking criticism for the first time ever, when I was just releasing my sexuality course. And it was from a stranger who used the application form. And so I went in completely disarmed, thinking that it's a new application. And this thing was just like stab, 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 like absolute fucking nastiness. And like, I pride myself on being a lovable person. Like, I have built a persona around being the loving one, being the easy to accept one, the palatable one, the diplomatic one, knowing how to modify myself to make everyone comfortable, but also to my own expense. Like, yes, that's a gift to have that and to be that and to do that. But I was also avoiding things like that. So I'm glad it happened, because it showed me my Achilles heel. It showed me where those beliefs still got in, which is just evidence that we're still holding those beliefs about ourselves. If someone can attack us and criticize us and judge us, and we don't hold that belief about ourselves, it's like water off a duck's back. It's not going to hurt you. You can see it for what it is. You can see someone else's pain and suffering, or you can see someone else's differing opinion, and you can stand there in your own wholeness and see it. But if we still believe that about ourselves, we are a vibrational match for that, and it comes in and it fucking hurts deep. Because this woman called me something along the lines of a worthless piece of shit. And I was like, I can't believe she used that language. That's the language that I used towards myself when I was young. That's absolutely how I felt about myself. So I know this was perfectly designed by spirit to use that fucking language to like get to my core and say, Erin, you've still got work to do. If this stranger on the internet can disempower you like that, here's your healing work. And so you can get to the point where you're like, thank you for strengthening me. Thank you for showing me where I still doubt myself. Because when you can stand in that wholeness, you can just see the world for what it is, and the world's suffering. Unfortunately, the world is suffering. So any negative consequences we get from us being ourselves is often just a projection of other people's pain and suffering, and they don't like what they see. So if we choose to be embodied sensual women and embodied sexual women, we have to understand that we're coming up against everyone else's belief systems of their discomfort with their own sexuality and their discomfort with their own sensuality. And they don't like to see it in us. We're simply a mirror reflecting something back to them. And women's sexuality has been tortured for centuries. You know, it's been taken away from us. And, you know, I've always been like, damn the patriarchy, damn the church, like you've robbed us of our sexuality. We must fight against this. We must uprise and reclaim ourselves. But what happened to me recently was I experienced a part of my own primal sexuality that was so intense. Like I go into this wordless, transcendent kind of space of sexuality in many different forms, but the primal is aggressive. It's aggressive and it's violent and it's ruthless and it's so it just wants to consume everything. You know, you're just that insatiable sexual woman that wants everything. And when it comes out of you, it is so uncontained that it's fucking terrifying. Like I can do it for a moment and then I'm like, oh, put me back in my box, please. Let me know I'm safe. Hold me and love me and tell me that you love me. But when I really experienced the most primal that I've ever been, I also understood why the church and why society has shut us down. Because if we gave everyone access to that energy tomorrow, if we literally just unlock the primal energy in every single person on the planet, would be in fucking chaos. Like the world, we would just see so much destruction because it takes a certain level of training to hold that energy. Yeah. You know, like you need to know how to use that safely and you need to know how to use that productively and constructively and with good intention, because it's a powerful force. That's it. It's just energy and it's powerful. So we can use that in a way that is amazingly healing. And, you know, we can share sexuality with someone that absolutely fucking life-changing sex, or we see it being used to destruct on the planet as well. So it all of a sudden gave me compassion. I was like, oh, that's why you shut us down. Okay. I won't judge you quite so harshly now. We still need to work against it because you went a bit too far. But it just helped me understand why sexuality has been so blocked on the planet, because truly I saw its absolute raw fucking power. And so I'm interested because I would identify both as sensual and as primal. But do you know FetLife at all?
No,
FetLife is like,
I know
it's a social network, right? So it's for people in kink and BDSM and with fetishes, and it's a closed social network where you can meet people and find events and post photos and blah, 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 blah. But you have to choose how you identify. And there's probably 20 identifiers, but I'm like, how can I put one fucking label on myself? You know, you could be submissive, you could be a dominant, you could be a rope bunny, you could be a rope top, you could be top, you could be a bottom, you could be a fetishist, you could be a hedonist, you could be exploring. Like, honestly, how could I just choose one? So I chose switch because I know that I have both a submissive and a dominance inside of me, but I decided to change it recently to a sensualist, because I would say that that is the energy that's most present in me. Oh, look how happy you are. You just purred.
Yeah. Fellow sensualist. Yes. I call it sensualista.
Yeah, because that energy is present all the time. No one could deny that in me. That's been in me since I was a child, and like demanding that I wore fur coats to my brother's soccer practice when I was 8 and only wear the dangly earrings and had to be surrounded by nice things. And like, not everyone's going to see my primal. Very few people on the planet will see that. The context that I need to unlock that part of my sexuality is it requires an extreme amount of trust and love and respect with my partner. So that's not something that will ever come out casually, but sensualism is here 24/7. It's not something that requires a context for me to feel sensual. And it's not something that I feel vulnerable sharing with the world. I feel very empowered in my sensual energy. So I thought, if I'm going to choose an identifier, that's probably the biggest part of my personality. But I'm interested about you and how, well, your relationship between sensuality and sexuality, but also any correlation for you between primal sexual energy and sensuality.
Yeah. Oh, so the sensualist, like I use the term sensualista in my work. And yeah, it kind of came to me when, you know, I was talking so much about sensuality, and of course, like I feel like I really embody that. And yeah, it's something that does come quite naturally to me, of course, that Taurus in me, and it feels so good. And I remember when I first started talking about sensuality so much, people were like, well, what's the difference between sensuality and sexuality? And baby, there's a lot of difference, but also there's a lot of correlation. Like they go together very well. But to be sensual is to be of the senses. It's to be so deeply connected to your internal world, to your external world, and then of course your interpersonal world. So it's about being mindful, aware, connected to your body, and like understanding the people around you as well. It's about deep presence, essentially, and really luxuriating in your five senses, you know, what, like, you know, having beautiful things around you. Everything's aesthetically pleasing and everything feels good. You've got soft sheets, not like some scratchy cheap ones. You've got like things smell good, things taste good, you savor in how things taste. You know, it's really about living that sensual life. And that's something that you can do every single day. You can embody your sensuality every damn day. You can embody your sensuality when you're washing the dishes, you know, and like actually stop, tune in to how amazing that warm water feels on your hands, the bubbles. Like, you know, you can make anything really deliciously present. And so the difference is that that's something that can like happen every single day. And sexuality, of course, is going to be something that takes it a step further. But the more sensual you are, the more deeply connected you are with your own sensuality, like the better sex you're going to have. Solo sex, partnered sex, group sex, like it's going to be heightened because you are more present, you're more aware, you're more tapped in to the senses. It makes everything better. And sex, it makes it sex like wildly better, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, we know.
There's no going back. Honestly, it raises the bar for you in a way that you just cannot ever return to sharing your body, or to, you know, allowing those kind of disconnected sexual experiences into your life.
Exactly. And I talk a lot on my podcast as well about the difference between gourmet sex and snack sex. And it's the difference between being connected and disconnected, being present and kind of just not being present in the moment at all. It's such a difference, but it can be one that's quite easy when you get the hang of it, to just kind of actually be in the moment. You know, you start to feel sensual in your everyday life, and then you just bring that into your sex life.
And so do you see any, well, in your personal life, I guess, do you have a correlation between primal sexuality and sensuality, or is your sexual expression tend to just stay in the realms of sensual and sexual?
No, I mean, I think that sexuality is something that there's so much to explore. I mean, yeah, I focus a lot on sensuality because I think it's a really nice gateway into exploring yourself and your sexuality even more. But from there, I mean, yeah, primal sex, like being really in touch with your urges and allowing yourself to voice that and share that and get like animalistic with a partner. And there's so many different types of sex to explore. And I think that so often we kind of grow up thinking that there's just like this one type, and it's so
and
vanilla.
It's very limited.
Very limited. And the more that you allow yourself to explore and try things and think, oh, okay, that wasn't for me, or yeah, that's really intriguing, but it's what we need is to take the shame away from it. You know, not have this shame attached to like, oh, if you like X, that means Y about you. You know, like I'm going to add a story of like, oh no, only these type of people like that kind of sex. You know, we don't kink shame. Like that's not where we're at. Like we want to grow and we want to learn, and we want to open ourselves up to pleasure. And pleasure looks really different to every single person.
Yeah. This is what I fucking love about BDSM more than anything. I did it myself. I had so much fucking judgment about BDSM. I can't even begin to tell you, but I am like the classic homophobe who was actually gay but didn't realize. Like all that judgment towards BDSM. All that judgment towards BDSM was because I'm kinky as fuck, and I did not want to accept it because of what that would mean about me, what I believed that would mean about me. But this is all extremely subconscious. And it just gave me so much compassion for that homophobe, because your brain is so fucking smart at attempting not to make you feel bad about yourself and covering up your own beliefs and stigmas that you just stand out there in judgment and think it's about the rest of the world, so that you don't have to feel those feelings that comes with admitting the truth about yourself.
Yeah.
And this is why we don't have peace on earth. This is why we don't have everyone being nice to each other, because of the subconscious mind. It's just such a tricky fucking beast that stops people from seeing the truth about themselves. And I consider myself a very self-aware, very evolved person. And I'm still discovering layers of my own fucking, oh man, that's me, isn't
Every
it?
day.
That thing that I've not been, that's me. There I am.
Oh, I feel you. Yes, absolutely.
So BDSM is the opportunity to meet parts of ourselves that society tells us is not okay. We don't like to be objectified walking the street, but in BDSM, we fucking love it. We don't like to be hurt in the street, but in BDSM, we fucking love it. It's like flipping society on its head and allowing you to experience the eroticism that exists in everything. And it's not everything for everyone, but you get to discover where your eroticism lies, where the energy is. So I used to have this like hierarchy of BDSM where these ones were okay. These ones were a little bit iffy, but if you liked these ones, you're really fucked up. There's something wrong with you to like these ones. So I had categorized them from my own morality of what was right and wrong. And now with my partner, who's very, very, very experienced in BDSM, has helped me see that actually that it's all a level playing field. For us, we use sex as medicine and as therapy and exploration. It doesn't matter what the thing is. What matters is there eroticism under there? Is there pleasure to be found there? Yeah. So you might say, okay, I really don't like feet, for example. That's a very, very common fetish for people. And so people are like, ooh, feet, who would ever like feet? Mm-hmm. But if I start to touch that button in your mind and I start to direct you towards that, is there some sort of response? The body doesn't lie. The body's going to respond to those things whether your mind wants it or not. And so that's what I found is like, Erin was like, resist, 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 resist. And he was like, what's that there? And I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said it to me. Like, my brain would fucking explode at the thought of that thing, the way that he had laid that fantasy up in my mind or like whatever. And I'd just be like, oh my God, like that's the power of eroticism. That's lying inside all of us, just waiting to be exploded, just waiting for the right context and the right people and the right circumstances that it is safe for you to see that. And then it's like, how could we ever judge it? Doesn't fucking matter what the story is in my mind, because ultimately this is two consenting adults. Like, you want to be a kitten? As soon as someone, because this is like a queen of sensuality for me too. One of the first people I was connecting with in BDSM, she said something along the lines of, oh, well, she's the one, she doesn't identify as the kitten, something, something, something. And I was like, you can identify as a kitten? What? It was, again, the whole world makes sense. I was like, I can be a kitten? I can be a kitten. Like, on a logical level, that makes no fucking sense to me. Why I want to be a kitten, or why that feels so true to me that someone just like granted my wishes that I could identify as a kitten. It's like, what the, like the human mind doesn't want to understand that. But in BDSM, we're not there to do that. We're there to find where the eroticism lies. And does it pleasure me? Does it turn me on to dress as a kitten, to enter this kitten space, to feel that feline sensuality in my body? Yes. And I've got pink fucking ears and a pink fucking tail that matches my pink hair. And I love it. I love being in my lingerie with my kitten ears and tail. And weirdly, it brings me so much comfort. That's the feeling I get from that. It's not actually a sexual experience as such. It's a very sensual one. And I'm like, oh, back in kitten space. It's just a part of me that wishes to be expressed. So for me, BDSM has been the biggest, most powerful transformation of my sexuality in teaching me no guilt, no shame.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is just that permission piece to explore deeper pleasure, not just what is, normal, quote unquote.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. You think that these things are normal, and then you look at kinky people and you're like, oh, that's weird. You guys are weird. There must be something wrong with you. I'm going to do an episode about this, all the scientific journals that prove that there is no greater psychological detriment or trauma in BDSM compared to control groups of people.
Yeah.
But And it was the same when I was kind of awakening into spirituality, because I was raised in a family of atheists and scientists. And so you look at spiritual people and that's a bit weird and that doesn't exist. And what are you really talking about? But as you start to evolve, you get to this place where you're like, oh my God, this is so fucking real. And then you look back at mainstream society and you're like, you're the fucking crazy ones. You go through a journey of thinking you're losing your fucking mind like step out of that. But when you're there, you're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And actually you're crazy. And what I've been realizing recently is that in BDSM, it makes so much sense. The weirdness, the fucked upness is how the mainstream views sexuality, of saying you can't explore that, you can't do that. The story that it's applied, if you're that kind of woman, well then what that means for you in society or whatever it might be, that's where the fucked upness exists, not in the people that want to dress as kittens and who might be turned on by feet. That's so normal. It makes so much sense, but it's the principle. It's not the particulars, it's a principle that the no kink shaming, the consent, the aftercare, the verbalization of your needs and wants, like these are such
the communication in BDSM is remarkable. And then in just like regular, like, you know, not vanilla, like I don't want to shame what is regular sex, but it's like, you know, what is the expected, what is the norm, that traditional type of sex, there's such a lack of communication, there's such a lack of like consent and boundaries, and it's just, it's wild that is not something that is considered normal. But then, you know, you get into a community that a lot of people shame and think is weird, like BDSM, and it's like so consensual, it's so much communication, like let's over communicate so that we can make sure we're on the same page and we prioritize each other's pleasure, and it's about like enjoying ourselves, not about anything else. There's a lot to learn,
and there really is. And the language thing is so like, it's not just that the communication doesn't happen, it's that we don't even have the language to put words to our feelings or our desires or what we want. Or a lot of the language around sex is also shamed. So, you know, like in my sexuality course, I'm teaching women how to be a whore and reclaim the word whore. And what does it really mean? And it means a woman that will own her sexual desire and be unashamedly sexual. But I can't tell you how many women get triggered when I say whore. Like it is, and it's just a word. It's just a word, but it has held this collective consciousness for so long that's stopped them from accessing that part of themselves by making them think whatever. So I feel like providing scripts and providing language for people is the first step of asking them to communicate, is telling them like how you can just ask for what you want in bed, and how to be able to say no, which is actually something I said to you just before we hit record, is like, are you comfortable being able to say no if I ask you a question that you don't want to answer? And that's because I asked that question because a lot of people can't even say no to that. They're not equipped. And I teach a lot of the women in my course is like, lay these neural pathways down now, practice this language now when you're not in the heat of the moment. Because when you're in the heat of the moment and your nervous system is responding differently, to try and find new language to a neural pathway that doesn't exist yet, it's impossible.
It's so difficult.
We need to, and that's why I fucking love conversations like this. Exactly.
We're not conditioned to actually advocate for our pleasure, to actually speak up about our boundaries. We're never taught this stuff, and that's why this work is so important. It's like, let's actually have conversations, let's learn, and like you said, language itself, the words we use is so important. Like you were saying with the word whore, I found out a few years ago that the word cunt is the only word in the English language that actually describes the entire female genitalia. And exactly, it's used as an insult.
Because it doesn't even have its own word. It's the vulva and the vagina, when actually it's one piece of anatomy. It's so fucking crazy, and it's all just an attempt to have taken the power out of it. And I just think, thank fuck we're the age that we are, living in the time that we are. Our grandmothers didn't get this pleasure. Our mothers didn't get this pleasure. Those women suffered greatly to give us the privilege of being here now and being able to have this conversation. There are women on the planet who would be stoned to death for having the conversation you and I are having publicly now. Like
1,000%.
It is an incredible fucking privilege not to be taken for granted, to be where we are at this time and to be able to reclaim our pleasure the way that we do. And I don't take that privilege lightly. Now, I've struggled against my privilege my whole life too. And recognizing how I might have got an easier path through life simply because of what I look like, some genetic lottery. On the human level, it's like, I didn't choose this. On the spiritual level, perhaps I did. That's another conversation. But I'm aware that I have this privilege in life that has put me in a different position from others. And that doesn't mean that we haven't had our own suffering and our own life journey that's difficult. But what can we do with this privilege? How can we take these incredible gifts that we've been given and use it to change the world in the most profound way that we can? And for you and I, that's about empowering women, you know, through the empowerment that we've taken, through owning our own pleasure. So would you like to share a little bit about the kind of blocks that you often see women having to overcome, and what are the kind of daily things people can be doing to really step more into their sensuality in their daily lives despite obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing that women sort of tend to come to me with is just saying that they can't get out of their heads and into their bodies.
100%.
You know?
100%.
We are so up in our heads. We live in a patriarchy. Our society values the energy of the masculine above all else. And so quite often, people who identify as female, we have this masculine mask that we put on just to be taken seriously in the world, to get by, just to make it, especially if you work in like a corporate setting or something like that. It's like, oh, I've got to perform my masculinity. I've got to show and prove that I can, you know, be as tough as you. And it's debilitating. It means that, you know, when we do get to a point where we want to make love to a partner and we don't feel comfortable embodying either our masculine or our feminine energies, these are energetic traits, we can't kind of fully surrender and just feel pleasure and be given pleasure. And we don't feel like we can fully take control either. And it's just like being in our heads too much. And so that obviously leads to kind of shitty sex. It leads to just feeling disconnected in your everyday life. It leads to resenting your body and like not actually appreciating this beautiful vessel that carries us through life. And so my main practice, like I've always worked in movement in some form, whether it be personal training way back when, teaching pole and dance. And now I moved through yoga, and now I teach my own embodied movement practice. And that to me is the quickest way to drop into your body, get out of your head, into your body. And suddenly you can start to embody your own sensuality and connect with your sexual essence. Movement is so powerful. And when I say movement, I'm not talking about going for a fucking run on the treadmill. Like, this is not like a boxing class. This is not any of that masculine energy. You know, think like forward and back, side to side, up and down. They're all very linear shapes, linear movements. They're very masculine, very rigid. Even traditional yoga was designed by men for male bodies. It is quite rigid unless you start to add in some flow into it. And so things like dance, things like just mindful movement, my practice, Sensually to Flow, it's about dropping into your femininity and exploring, you know, it's taking those shapes and, you know, making them like big and rounded, circular, like juicy, gooey, flowy movements. That quickest way to actually get out of your goddamn head and into your body. You feel so sensual doing that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, this is what I love about primal sex as well, actually, is because it's such a non-verbal and instinctual thing, and because the physical sensation is so extreme. And actually just BDSM in general is a lot about sensation. It's not even about sex, which is where a lot of people misunderstand it. It absolutely does not have to have sex. It might, but often it's simply about experiencing sensation and different kinds of sensation. But feeling is the antidote to thinking. So the more we're in our body and the more aware we are of our body, the less we can be in our head. So if you get grabbed and thrown on the fucking bed and pulled by your hair, it's just like, oh, there's no thoughts. You're just like, I'm about to get fucking consumed. You know, it's so physical that, and you're forced to express yourself through your physical vessel because you're not using words. Primal isn't about, you have your communication beforehand and your negotiations and your consent, but when you're fucking in it, it's so embodied. It's about teeth and tongues and nails and, you know, like flesh and taste and scent and like the fucking true animal nature of us. It's like there's no space for being in your head.
Yeah.
But I too am, and I have Venus in Gemini, so I actually am very turned on by my mind. I am incredibly stimulated by my mind. And that's the case for many, many women as well. We need turn on the mind and the body will follow. Yeah. You know, like if the mind is not being engaged in the sexuality at that time, the body's not going to respond like that. If you're thinking about your to-do list and if you're thinking about body image and not wanting to show those roles, or is your cellulite obvious with a light on, or is this person going to get up and leave me and disconnect from me at the end of this? All those kind of thoughts we're taking away from our orgasmic potential. Our orgasmic
it's just like a break
comes from
it's just like, oh no, like I'm gonna just put the brakes on and I'm not gonna allow you to even get there. And I think this is what some people just don't understand, is that like we do have these systems, they're called the sexual excitation and the sexual inhibition systems, that act as our brake and our accelerator. And if we have all those things up in our head that we're worried about, it's just putting on the brakes again and again and again. And then you're like, maybe you'll put on the gas a little bit, but then you put the brakes on at the same time. And it's like, this shit's not going to move.
Yeah. And that's me. That's been me my whole life. My accelerator is very sensitive. I'm a sexual person by standards, you know, like I'm more sexual than most women, but I also have this very normal break. And so I can be the most sexual person in the world, but as soon as I'm worried about money, as soon as I'm worried about my body image, as soon as I'm worried about whether that person is going to replace me, it's just like come to a halting stop. And I have gone years without feeling my sexual energy and completely normalizing it, which is what I think I see in so many clients. Actually, this is a great question. I'm curious about you, if you feel called to share, is the nature of long-term relationships, which dulls eroticism. You know, like how many people are in long-term relationships where the sex has died off, or they're mums and they've got children and they've got all these demands on life and the sex has dropped off. My antidote to that is being poly. Again, it's very true to who I am to be non-monogamous, is that my emotional needs and how I need to be fed and met emotionally is very different from how I need to be fed and met sexually. And the likelihood of having one person cover that entire spectrum is rare. Even though my current partner can reach across both, our greatest priority is our sexuality. To have the sexuality that we have, we must have a mental and an emotional and an energetic connection. So those things are valued and nurtured for the sexuality. So I would never be emotionally neglected. I would never be shut down or disrespected, regardless, but mainly because we focus on our sexuality. But in order to keep that what it is, we know we'll never live together. We are choosing to consciously construct it in a way that we never put ourselves in the position where we could lose the incredible gift that we have of absolutely life-changing sexuality. So what's your relationship status and how do you navigate your relationships, and what do you think about keeping eroticism and sensuality alive in long-term relationships?
Well, I love this question. So I mean, I think
all 5 of them. Apologies, that was not a great coaching question, Erin. That was layered upon layered upon layered, but it's a good avenue that we'll explore.
It's a great avenue. Okay, so for starters, so I explored my first non-monogamous polyamorous relationship last year. It was brand new to me. I had no bloody idea about anything to do with non-monogamy. You know, as far as I was concerned, it was like they were speaking German to me. I was like, what is this? And then I read like all the books, listened to all the podcasts. You know, I met this man who was polyamorous. He told me on our first date. It was completely consensual. I was like, okay, cool. Clearly there was part of me that was very interested. Otherwise I wouldn't have gone on another date with him. And it was the most eye-opening experience ever. Very difficult in some ways, but you know, it like just scratches on all those triggers that you didn't know you had. But I have never communicated so well in a relationship, and it taught me so much. And I've taken those skills now, and I'm still practicing non-monogamy. I've also been nomadic, so I haven't quite had a, another deep relationship since, but it's something that I have definitely been practicing with people that I've been seeing for however long, that I am non-monogamous. I am going to keep dating other people. I am not going to be monogamous at the moment. I'm totally open to whatever happens. It's not something that I'm like, oh, I must identify this way forever, but I feel much more comfortable in checking in now and understanding what it is that makes me feel good and most nourished. And right now, this is what feels great. I'm also bisexual, and so this kind of allows me to date people of different genders and get that full experience. And at the same time, I love what you said about not living with your partner, because for me, I think that's something that I've recently realized as well, that I don't want to live with a partner. Like that doesn't sound super appealing to me. I love my business. I work really hard. I love my work, and I know
that's
that
our
in
primary
my past,
relationship.
I have had experience. That's my primary relationship.
Mission,
like number
my mission
one
is my lover. Yeah.
Basically, like it is so important to me. And I know that in the past I've had a pattern of losing my whole self, my identity, because I would give so much to my partner and want to see them succeed. And I was like, what am I doing? I've lost myself. And I think there's part of me that's like, I don't want to do that again. But I also just love the idea of having my own space and then being deeply present. When I am going to be with my partner, I'm going to be with them and nowhere else.
Exactly.
And that feels so good to me.
Yes, I agree. I agree with everything that you just said so much. And also, just on a completely side tangent, I did a photo shoot for Juju sanitary, sustainable sanitary products last week. So I got all these new products, including period panties, which you cannot get in Bali. So
awesome.
I'm wearing my period panties, and it's such a head fuck, because that feeling of bleeding is something that has caused us panic for 25 fucking years, or however long I've had my period. It's the feeling you want to avoid, and now you have to have that feeling and just be okay with it. It's so weird.
Yeah.
So you're just talking, and I had this moment of like,
oh,
I need to cut this interview off now. And I'm like, no, you don't.
What a relief. What a relief. I'm there with you.
It feels so very natural. It actually feels so comfortable for my body in many ways. But it's just this like, oh, no, it's okay, relax.
It's like a moment of panic where you're like, oh God, back to high school. I don't want to stain my pants.
Yeah, exactly. But back to what you said about relationships is, for me at this point in my time, my mission is also such a rewarding part of my life. And when it wasn't the case, relationships became the primary focus, and I felt this yearning, and I felt this grasping and this wanting to have this space in my life filled. But I get my needs met so well on so many levels here. My fantasy, my manifestation, my dream is like I get so much masculine energy from my partner and still this deep access to the feminine inside him. It's fucking amazing, like how much of each other's spectrums we meet. But I want a woman in my life as well to really deepen that connect. Because I was thinking, do I want another male partner? Like, he's kind of ruining me for all other men. I'm sorry, dudes. Like, they're not really going to be able to offer much compared to this. It's so fucking life-changing. I don't want to put words, I don't actually believe this, but I doubt that I'll ever find anyone who can take me to those places sexually. That's a lifetime of work for someone to be able to craft those sexual experiences for me. It's not mainstream. But I know in my life, everything always gets better. So should he and I end for whatever reason, I actually believe that the next step will still come, that it won't be a lack in my life afterwards. But my intention is that it doesn't end, but I also don't want to create a story around that. So I was like, do I want another male partner? Because at the moment we're in a foundation building stage. So I don't want anyone else. I don't want to add any more complexity to the experience of falling in love, to the experience of being poly, to the experience of a new dominant and submissive dynamic. And then I thought, well, if I get my sexual needs met from him so well, that kind of takes it out of the realm of what other dudes offer. And the mental and emotional connection with men has never been satisfying for me compared to women. So really, the ideal circumstance for me would be to have a male partner and get all those amazing masculine qualities from him, and then have a female partner and be able to enjoy all the female qualities with her. Of course, I want a partner in my bed every night. There's like comfort to be found in sharing my home with someone. One day I'm going to want a child, and I have no idea how that's going to look at this point. So it is this like moment to moment fluidity, I guess, of like where my needs are, what I'm craving, who might be able to meet that, and in what method. But it is such a liberating thing to recognize it's not just one way, that I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket and saying, you must meet all this for me, or I'm not going to be happy. You must be deep and be able to talk to me for an hour and 3 minutes about sexuality like a woman can. And you must be the dominant, the strong, the provider. Like my lover.
Why do we put all this pressure on one person?
Like, here are all my needs. And I'm a deep and complex emotional person. There's a lot of need in here. Like, here you go. You're responsible and you don't feel it for me. And now I'm suffering and you're suffering because I'm placing expectations on you that you can't fulfill. So to me, poly it makes perfect sense, but it requires an incredible amount of consciousness and self-awareness and courage to face yourself. You can do it really badly and avoid yourself through poly. Of course, not show up fully with anyone. I see that a lot in Bali. Dudes that just want to get their dick wet. It's like they're going to stay poly, break their girl's heart. She suffers and he just gets what he wants on the superficial level. And I don't agree with that. And of course, that's a massive generalization, but I see that commonly. What I don't see so commonly is people executing poly really well because of the amount of fucking courage and the amount of communication and the amount of, there's a refined awareness that you need. Like if it was you and I, for example, I need to know that I'm still meeting your needs. I need to be able to read if you're suffering in some way or if your situation's changing and how I might be able to accommodate that. Plus I have to also keep the awareness of the other partners and the other lovers. And can I meet multiple needs of multiple people at the same time? And yourself. And exactly right. Are they meeting my needs? It's huge and it's not for everyone. But what I do see is that in terms of keeping eroticism alive, typically monogamy and single relationships isn't the environment for eroticism to thrive.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, like you said, I don't believe that non-monogamy is for everybody. I think that there is definitely the place for conscious monogamy. And that's the difference between assumed monogamy and conscious monogamy. If you're going to choose this person and you're like, I'm going to commit to you, I want to marry you, I want to have babies with you, I want to do the whole thing together until we die. That's a really big decision to make. Like I would not be taking that lightly. And so you want to be on the same page. You want to be able to have these discussions and grow together and learn and really keep challenging what your relationship looks like and your erotic life, your sexual life. Like how are things changing? Because sex isn't always going to look the same as it did at the start. You know, I think it's really important to kind of regularly check in. And this is actually something I'm going to do an episode on soon, but I got this this wonderful podcast called Polyamorous. I don't know if you've heard of it. No. It's a game changer. And I binged it when
Sounds
I first
like my
started
jam.
seeing my ex. It's amazing. It's all about non-monogamy and polyamory. And I learned so much. And they created this kind of framework, which is essentially a regular relationship check-in, and they call it RADAR. And it's an acronym, and it goes through essentially going to your partner each month and checking in at like the status of the relationship. You know, how are you feeling about all different aspects? And one of them, of course, is your sex life, and thinking, okay, well, what new things do you want to try? Like, how are we feeling? How's your body? How's your mind? How's your soul? Like, what's happening? And having that conversation. I think the problem is when things are assumed. I know that in my like past very long relationship, I say very long, it was 5 years, but anyway, it felt like a lifetime.
It is a long-term relationship for today's standards, you know, Maybe not by the old era where it was one person for life, but in these days, many people have never had a 5-year relationship.
Yeah. And that one, like, I feel like we never deeply spoke about anything. It was just this assumption. And, you know, at one point when we were going through the breakup, he admitted to me that he had low-key hoped I would get pregnant just so that he would be forced, in his words, to change his behavior and commit to me. And I was like, wow. Dude, that's not the way to do it. How about we have a conversation? But at the same time, I didn't have like the skills to really voice what I wanted in that relationship either.
Yeah, exactly. I have no judgment for my past relationships at all. They were all beautiful opportunities to learn, to become who I am now, to have been able to attract the quality of relationship I have now, which blows my fucking mind out of the water with the level of consciousness. And like even my healer said to me this morning, Erin, this is, your heart is opening to new channels of love. Like this is an experience that you haven't had ever before. And I'm like, yeah, no one demonstrates this for us. We never were shown how to have these conversations, the importance of it, getting our needs. I said to my mum recently, like we'd had a massive fight and I said, what do you need, Mum? And I could see her brain was just like there is no neural pathway for that. In her 60s, she's never had the privilege of asking, what do I need? How can I prioritize my needs? How can I A, be aware of what my needs are, and then B, get my needs met? Like it's just something that hasn't been shown before. So I look back at all those relationships and I'm like, oh my God, thank you for being my teacher in the most painful way sometimes, the most painful way. But something else that you said really caught my attention, and it was that you had this experience of losing yourself into another. And that's a very, very common experience if you identify as submissive or if you have an anxious attachment. And what I have found is that being in a dominant and submissive dynamic allows me, because that's a very natural quality for me, to pour myself into someone, to devote myself to someone, to have this very devotional love and this desire to be of service and to help that person transform into the best person that they can be. You know, my life is transformation. That's what I'm here to do for everyone. So to have this lover where I can offer my love and my heart and my body and my mind and my gifts and serve that person for their transformation. But to do it in a DS dynamic means that it is so valued and recognized for what it is, and that energy is poured straight back into me. And there is someone giving of themselves in a slightly different way by holding the dominant energy, but their purpose is also to allow me to transform and be the biggest and best version of myself. So I think there's a whole heap of women in my life who don't recognize that they are submissive by nature, or they don't recognize that perhaps they have an anxious attachment and that that's something that they can work on and heal, so that the expression comes out in a healthier way and not a destructive way where we pour ourselves into something where we just get lost and we don't get topped up and we don't get nourished in return, or people can sometimes take advantage of it or get used to us giving and giving and giving, and then they don't have to give back, or they don't know how to give back, or they get overwhelmed by how much we want to love them. I think there was even a book in the 80s about women who love too much. I've never read the content of the book. I don't know what it is, but it is a very common experience for us women to want to pour our love into something. And so if other people identify with that,
not ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, in a good DS dynamic, part of the dominance is to support you. Now, this is going to sound strange for people who don't understand it completely, but you basically become owned by something else. You become an object that someone else has. You become someone's property is probably the easiest way to say it. And so because I know that I'm his in that way, me taking care of myself is how I love him, by being the best version of myself, and by taking care of my body, and by taking care of my mind, and by taking care of my heart. It's how I get to show my love and my gratitude. And then he uses his dominance to help me be the best version of me. Like, it's unbelievable to have someone who sees me so completely and loves me so completely and sees my potential and then provides his energy to back that. Like, it's a life-changing experience. But I think for a lot of women, they don't understand, or submission itself has also been like, here goes the homophobe thing again. Do you know how much judgment I had for submissiveness? I thought it was so weak and I thought it was so fucked up and like blah, 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 blah. And a lot there's so much damage done in the world by the cultural submissiveness of women, you know, that it hasn't come from an empowered and an equal place. But a good DS dynamic comes from equality and recognizing that we're equals, and now we choose to exchange energy and power in this way that meets both your needs for dominance and meets both my needs for submission. And then we use that to accelerate who we are in the world and to transform and find more and more and more of our power. So yeah, for anyone that's listening that also has had that experience of like, have I lost myself again, is to perhaps consider, is that my need for submission? Is that me looking for a way to get my needs for submission or my needs for service? Service-oriented submission, I would say, is probably the most common form of submission to find. Is like, I want to give my love to someone. I want to serve someone. I want to take care of someone in that way. And if the recipient of that doesn't recognize it and doesn't know what it is and can't value it because they don't see it, it destructs. But if you can find a partner that sees it and loves it and values it and takes the energy that you're giving and pours it straight back into you,
magic.
Life will fucking change. It's just amazing. So I'm the biggest advocate for power exchange relationships, for very conscious, very loving, very respectful power exchange, and very conscious, very loving, very respectful poly. And I also recognize that it's not for everyone, and I completely honor and respect everyone's unique choices. But yeah, that was a little monologue from Erin based on what you shared. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
So
no, it's so fascinating.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, is there anything you wanted to say or ask or share? Or I did just still.
I mean, just I think I think you know, as you were saying before, language is so important, and the term submissive has gotten a really bad reputation, and so we don't quite understand submission. It's about surrender, and that's actually a really powerful thing to do, to open up and surrender and allow someone to kind of take you and ravish you and take control. That's actually quite a strong, powerful trait to have in you. But because we now use the word submission to think of someone who is powerless, that's where I think people get confused about BDSM and the dom sub relationship, because they don't get it. It's like, oh, what, you want to be powerless? It's like, no, I want to be taken.
Yeah, and
different.
The submissive has the power in many. This is a bone of contention, and it can be looked at multiple levels of consciousness. So it's not a blanket rule, but it's often said that the submissive holds the power, because the submissive is the one who gives consent. We choose what we allow and what we don't, and we're the ones that would say stop or use a safety word, although the top can also do that. But when I think about it in that primal aspect, if there is a predator and a prey, and I'm the prey, and I'm being stalked, and I can feel that energy is focusing on me, and I can feel the pacing of that fucking line that wants to absolutely ravish me, where's the attention? If I move this way, I'm the one that's bringing the dominant in that sense. And sometimes I forget that I feel such equality, like I've never felt in my life, that I almost forget that I'm submissive, which is weird because there's no doubt that I know my place. I know my role. I love getting my needs met in that way, but it comes with such a sense of equality and empowerment, and I get to be all of myself. And I'm, for the first time in my life, not too deep, not too emotional, not too sensitive, not too whatever the story is. It's like, I want all of you, Erin. I want all of you. I want all of you. And all he wants to do is empower me to be more and more and more of myself. And I'm like, fuck, how is this less than? How is this weak? How is this powerless? Actually, it takes such strength. Just like we said at the beginning, the courage that it takes to share your sensuality with the world and to turn on your light as a sexual woman, the courage that it takes to step into a poly relationship, the courage that it takes to even invest in a coach and be willing to look at yourself, that courage is power. To be vulnerable in that way, to let your guard down, to take off the mask, to be really fucking raw and real about who you are is power, not powerlessness. Even the word surrender, there's the surrender of like completely allowing the experience to take over you. And there's a surrender of waving the right flag and giving up. Again, it's this language experience. Like, it's a misunderstanding of how powerful it can be. And I want everyone to feel the power. I want every woman on the planet to feel safe to be sexual and to feel the pleasure and the joy and the love that comes from embracing this part of ourselves that we were born for. We were fucking born for this.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. It's inside all of us. Actually, that'll be my final question for you before we wrap up. Do you believe that this energy is inside every single woman?
Of course.
Sensuality. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's just about giving yourself permission to find it, because it absolutely exists. Like, we are sensual beings. We are of the earth, you know, just as like, yeah, sure, we're all universal beings. We are energetic, but we are also grounded in this reality. We exist here on earth. We have a physical body, and it's here for us to enjoy. So enjoy it. Give yourself permission. That's all. Society's kind of conditioned us to think that we don't have permission, and that our body, especially the feminine form, doesn't exist for our own pleasure, that it exists for the pleasure of others and the external gaze, but it doesn't. It's for you. It's for you only. So give yourself permission, take the time, explore, and yeah, you're going to find inside you've got this delicious, amazing, empowered sensualista.
Yeah. And then you'll be like, how did I ever? It was like eating cardboard up until now.
Exactly.
I could never go back. But you know, like, even as you say that, I think, fuck, when you reclaim yourself, when you have that pleasure for yourself, and then if you choose to give your body for someone else's pleasure, you know, to submit and offer that deliciousness, the fucking honey that is dripping from you because you have embodied that. Like, it is such a fucking honor to give yourself to someone's pleasure. It is so deeply satisfying. But that first step has to be for us.
Yeah.
It has to be for us. That I think many of my clients are afraid that their relationships will end, that they know on some level that when I do this, life cannot be the same.
Isn't that saying something though? Like, if you think, oh gosh,
exactly.
but if I prioritize my own pleasure, that means that maybe I'll realize that I'm worth way more than this schlub over here who isn't giving me the time of day, who isn't honoring me, who isn't seeing me. Like, that's a sign that he ain't no good. But also there's the potential that you're going to step into your magnetism, and suddenly your partner is going to step up and be like, damn, I can't believe I wasn't like honoring you, because you are like fire. You're a goddess. I can't believe I wasn't noticing that before. And you're like, yeah, damn right. Look at me. I'm amazing. You're in my energy. Lucky you.
There's a reel in there. I saw it, girl. I expect to see this on Instagram very shortly. I shall send you the recording.
Love it. Thank you.
Yes. And I just want to honor for those people who are, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with your partner, or he's not worthy, or that he's not lovable. But sometimes he just can't, he or she or they cannot hold you in that energy because they're not ready to face it within themselves.
Oh yeah.
Because
triggering as fuck.
Staying comfortable. Yeah. And so yes, relationships break down. Yes, chaos happens. That's part of nature. It's part of evolution, but out of the chaos comes order. And as you step into your power like that, whatever is no longer in vibrational alignment will fall away. And that can be scary, and it can feel like lack, and it feel like loss. But I tell you what, whatever the fuck replaces it, that whether that's your partner stepping up on the journey, or whether that's attracting that next fucking mind-blowing fucking lover that you just can't even believe exists. Like, what the actual fuck? It's worth it. It's fucking worth it. So just find the fucking courage and claim your body and claim your fucking pleasure, and just everything. I'm getting so many fucking goosebumps. My body is so happy. My nipples are probably getting hard. Like, yes, girl. Yes, we feel the pleasure.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yes.
Eleanor, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I love talking about this.
Me too. So how can people find you? What can they do with you if people are just like, yep, that's my girl, like I was? Where do they go?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's at Eleanor Hadley, ELEANORHADLEY. And website is the same, myname.com. And yeah, I've got the Sensuality Academy podcast. I do episodes every Monday. And I talk all about embodying your femininity, enhancing your sex life, and elevating your relationships. And at the moment, I've actually got a waitlist up for a new course, which is coming up, called The Art of Seduction. And that's going to be all about teaching you. Yeah, it's going to be juicy. It's going to be teaching you how to be magnetic and how to really embody your inner sensualista, your inner seductress. And I'm going to be teaching lap dance. I taught it recently here in Byron, and everyone just went nuts for it. It's so fun. It's going to be embodied lap dance. So that is coming soon, as a kind of an add-on to my previous course.
Yes, because I enrolled in your previous course. Would you like to share with people what your previous course was all about?
Yes. Yeah, it's called The Art of Sensual Movement. And this is, like I was talking about before, it's about really getting embodied and getting out of your head into your body and learning movements that may not come naturally at the start, but eventually you're going to be like flowing around in your bedroom and it's going to feel super juicy. So that online course is available.
Feline. It's so feline. This is where the kitten energy comes from.
Yes, the cat rolls. I have an entire module on cat rolls.
Yeah. It is. It's unfortunately, society has told us not to move our body that way. You know, like don't rock your hips when you walk. A client of mine was from Chile, and she said, "Oh, Erin, we were talking about the sacral chakra in a workshop back when I lived in Melbourne, like 6 or 7 years ago." And she was like, I know everyone here is like talking about the traumas that they're holding in their sacral chakra from, you know, feeling violated or have their boundaries crossed or whatever the stuff. She's like, in my country, it wasn't like that. She's like, my sexuality was so celebrated. She's like, my uncles would tell me that I was sexy as a child and there was no threat. They all move their bodies like that, you know, like their passionate energy is moving through their bodies in a way. Exactly. You bring it to us. We're like, whoop, especially because in Australia, we have a bit of an English hangover, and English etiquette takes us very far from our true nature. Very, very far from our true nature. It's all, again, rigid, controlled, which is nice. It's nice to have access to that, but not at the expense of losing this natural, because the feminine is meant to move like that. I start fucking rocking my hips and I get horny straight away. Like, oh, here we go. Or I start to get horny and my hips totally rock. I can't sit still. And actually, I was thinking the other day how often I used to masturbate silently and how easy it was for me to come without sound. And then now to use sound so much, I can't come silently. I can't control myself in that way anymore. Once it's unleashed from you, you can't put it back in its box.
Yeah, and so it shouldn't go back in its box.
Exactly. When you learn to move your body like this, it's like you've liberated that part of yourself and she's not going away. She's absolutely not going away. So bring her out.
Yeah. Bring her out. Bring her out. Let's like roll those hips. Let's circle those, you know, the chest, do some hair flicks. I've got an entire module on hair flicks. It's a vibe.
That's amazing. Oh, darling, it's been such fun. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I love talking about all of this. It's been such fun talking with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, darling.